Hi guys, and welcome to this episode of Fireside Chat with the Johnstons. I'm Danielle, and I am your host for today.
Who is that lady?
Okay, so before we get into the episode, I have just got to tell you guys the craziest thing happened today. So last week, Justin and I, on Friday, actually put in an application for a reality TV show. First of all, I texted this to Shelly today, and she's like, oh yeah, what TV show? And I said, Temptation Island. And then I was like, just kidding. I swear, I'm kidding. So we put in an application for the TV show Extracted. So if you've never seen it, I believe it was in its first season this year. I started watching when I had the flu, and after like one episode, Justin hopped in and started watching it with me. And basically, you're a team of 3 people, and one person goes and lives like in the wilderness and like just has to survive, whether it's super cold or you have to find water and boil it and make fire and like all this stuff. And you have to survive basically in the wilderness while the other 2 people on your team are back in this headquarters. And they can watch you. It kind of looks like 24/7 that they would be able to see you. And they have to do these challenges. And within the challenges, they can earn you tools for survival, like a knife or a flint or a sleeping bag or food or something like that. And so we're watching this show week after week. And every week, Justin's like, I could do that. What are they doing? I could do that.
You sure about that?
And the whole time I'm like, yeah, I could not do that. The premise of the show is that basically you don't get to leave the survival area, like the wilderness, until your family members back in headquarters decide to extract you. So you can like plead and plead and plead with the camera, like, please extract me, get me out of here. And it's not until your family members get to go push the button that says like you're extracted. So think like Hunger Games, but like you can get out. So anyway, we applied for this show because Justin was so convinced that he could do it. And while I would want to be extracted after like my first mosquito bite, probably, I do think I would be really good in headquarters. And so we applied with me and Justin, my dad, mostly because my dad has a good navigation background. And navigation is not for me unless Siri is telling me to turn right. Like I probably can't figure out to turn right. So yeah, guys, that was super fun to like put together. It said Fireside Chat in the background, and I put together this cool audition video. You only get 1 minute. So basically Justin filmed 10 minutes and I had to edit 9 minutes out of it. And anyway, we put in the application on Friday, and today is Thursday, and we got a text message asking, it was one of the producers or casting agents for the show, that they want to have a meeting because they think Justin would be a good prospect for it. So pretty excited. I'm drinking an Alani right now, and I probably don't even need it because I was pretty hyped up after that. That was pretty awesome. So as I go through today, we are going to talk about how to survive your tryouts. How's that for a segue?
Perfect.
I'm going to give you 5 things that if you do them wrong at tryouts can really ruin your entire season. So how did my story of a reality show segue into this? Pretty poorly, but I was just excited and wanted to give you guys a little glimpse into our lives. So you will see Justin is not here, or maybe you can hear if you're just listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, that Justin is not here with me today. He will be on next week, but I was excited to hop on here and talk a little bit of cheerleading on this Thursday. Okay, so on the last episode, I told you my behind the scenes review of the All-Star World Championship, and then I went on to tell you what it looks like in those weeks that follow between our end of season event and our tryouts. And so I had some really good questions that were submitted by viewers, and I wanted to go through those today, but I'm not really going to say like, here's the question, here's the answer. I'm just going to give you 5 huge mistakes that can totally derail your season before it really even begins. And all of those mistakes can happen if you don't do tryouts just right. All right, guys, so let's get into it. Okay, number 1, aging up kids because they are so mature. So there have been times that we have made this mistake for sure. Actually, I'm pretty sure that all of the mistakes I'm going to go through today are ones that I have made in my gym. But this particular mistake, I do find that I still make it to this day sometimes.
I won't make the same mistake twice.
I will look at a kid who is maybe 10 or 11 and be, we've got a youth 2 team, but we've also got a junior 2 team. You know what? She could probably hang on the junior 2 team. And I do think that there are some times that would be an appropriate fit. Like, for example, if you have, you're in need of a flyer on the junior team and that kid is 10 or 11 and they probably wouldn't fly on the youth team, but they're like a really good flyer. I could definitely see certain circumstances like that. However, what I found when I told you in the last episode, we had already done some pre-placing. What I found is that, unfortunately, we did make some of those judgment calls where we're like, man, she's like just a little bit more mature. She could probably hang with that age group. And if you're a parent listening to this, you're probably like, wait a minute, there are kids that could do that. And I'm with you, but I think it's really important that we're placing kids at the appropriate age range for them. Let's talk about why. So we have a couple kids this year that we had to choose for the current season, season 13. We had to choose, are they going to go youth 2 or junior 2? One of the 2 teams was going to be extra small and one was going to be small. We decided to age them up to the junior 2 division. We thought their tumbling would be a little bit more valuable or used a little bit more on that team. And so we aged them up to that team. And what we found was, moving into this season, I'm not sure if that was totally the right option. We ended up having a small junior 2, which if you're like East and West Coast, you're like, Danielle, make a medium or a bigger team or something. The thing is, in our part of Missouri, and especially competing through the Open Championship circuit, they don't do D1, D2 splits. And so if you have a team that is extra small, you're probably going to be competing against more gyms that are a little bit more your size. If you have a team that is small, or definitely if you have a team that's in the medium or large division's the wrong word, but like your team size, you're more likely going to be going against those D1 gyms that have large numbers of athletes that can compete at that level. So for me, where I don't have as many kids that would be competing youth 2 versus junior 2, we had to make that decision last year. Are we going to age them up and make this I call it large, but it's actually a small junior team and an extra small youth 2, or should we keep them at the youth division, make them small youth 2 and extra small junior 2? So if you're just like a business person and you're listening to me right now, you're like,
Get on with it.
if you are a cheer coach or somebody who places teams, especially if you compete Open Championship circuit where there is not a D1, D2 split, you're probably understanding where I'm coming from here. What we found last year is we were really competing against some pretty hard gyms, some big name gyms that would typically, I would have thought, competed varsity events, that when they were coming to these Open Championship Series events, they were very, very hard to beat. So where I'm kind of going with this is that because we aged those kids up last year, some of them are still like 11 and 12 years old and they're youth age eligible. And so this year, as I was placing kids on teams, I'm like, man, I think I want to make, so we're still kind of in the same dilemma. We're going to have a small and an extra small, and I've got to figure out which is going to be which. I kind of want to make the youth 2 team a small team and the junior 2 an extra small, and kind of keep those older kids with the older kids themselves. Well, it kind of posed an interesting topic this time because it meant we will have some kids that were junior 2 last year that will go youth 2 this year. If you guys have dealt with parents, then you understand that as a coach, it's a level 2 or a level 2, and you're age appropriate for both. As a parent, you might be looking at that saying she was with older kids and now she's going to be with little kids, right? When realistically, we all know they're probably not little kids if they're on a youth 2. They're probably like young kids, but not little kids, right? Anyway, that was kind of the dilemma that we're in. And it made me think, man, you can really ruin a season right from the beginning before it even starts by putting kids on a team simply because you might believe they are more mature than they need to be. The other issues we find is that I've had kids that placed on a senior team before, and the following year, maybe we lost that senior athlete and no longer needed to be senior, and now we're junior. And there's this big uproar over we have to wear conversion pieces and we're no longer the seniors and this and that, where, maybe those kids didn't have to be placed on a senior team in the first place. So if you're in that position, just really put a lot of thought into once you kind of age up, it's really hard to take them backwards. Now, I did meet with a dad yesterday and I said, listen, on junior 2, this girl was a really good tumbler. She did a lot of the tumbling. She didn't jump. She was, she was in dance. She wasn't, I wouldn't say featured. She wasn't in the front of dance. She was in stunting, but she didn't play this pivotal role in stunting. And so I said, I want to place her on Youth 2 next year. I understand that may feel like she's going backwards, but it's the same division. And I know I'm coaching Youth 2 and I can push her. So that was the conversation we had. He handled it really well. He said, she knows you guys are going to place her where she needs to be, but I agree with you. She might at first feel like that's a step backwards. So just remember, aging kids up simply because they're mature or you're trying to balance out teams, it's really important if you do that you are very clear with parents that this is the age division you're competing at, but your child actually is a youth athlete, or they're competing senior, but that doesn't mean they couldn't be junior again one day. I also found that this happens a lot on prep teams. I didn't have a youth prep team last year. I had a junior prep team. So if you were too old to be on mini prep, you were on junior prep. And now I have kids who were junior prep, but then they're going to go youth elite. Luckily, they, between prep and elite, they really probably won't think a whole lot of it. But just remember, especially in small gyms where you don't have every age division and every level, that's something that you're going to want to really educate these parents on early on. Do it before tryouts. And my opinion is if you think that they are going to age-wise kind of age down, give the parents a heads up so that they are very clear before tryouts and are released that it's still the same level, maybe just a different age division, and 10 times better if you can explain to them why you feel like that's a better fit. So number 2 here, give parents and athletes a heads up on placements. I am a firm believer that what team you are on is not the surprise of tryouts. The level that you are getting placed at should not be the excitement of tryouts and the big surprise and reveal, right? We don't do that in my gym because in the early years, that is what I thought we were doing. I thought we were surprise, you're on youth level 1 or surprise, you're on senior level 3. And what I found is that when that becomes the surprise, you have so many people who are disappointed.
I'm gravely disappointed.
They're disappointed because they thought they had a different level of skill, and in a moment that should be exciting and happy and a fresh start to something, you're finding that it's really not a fresh start. It's kind of a sad ending, right? Because that's that child's their love for the sport is dying over time. But if starting in February, you can do some of those benchmark assessments and say, hey, listen, your back walkover is good. Your switch leg back walkover is good. You still are pretty beginner in this handspring. Maybe you're not fully blocking with your shoulders. Hips aren't up. Your toes aren't pointed. Knees aren't straight. Arms aren't fully extended in the handspring. Or you have your handspring, but you don't have front walkover round off back handspring. You don't have a step out. You can start saying those things in February, which is when we do those benchmark assessments. And there are times that it's super helpful and you can be okay, but start these private lessons now. And I do think she can get there in time, right? There's other times though that you've coached long enough, you kind of know that athlete is just not going to be ready in time for tryouts. And guys, choreography comes so fast after tryouts that if you don't have that skill pretty well perfected at tryouts, you're probably not going to make it in the top 60% that tumble in the routine itself. And so that's something you have to just kind of prepare for. And not giving athletes that heads up about where they're going to place is very challenging. Now, if you're a gym that you don't even think about tryouts until it's time for tryouts and you have no idea what levels you're going to have, or like me, every so often you're surprised because I talked on the last episode about how we were going to have a senior 4. And then I had a couple athletes decide they were a little burned out and they're going to take a season off. And then I had another one that said, well, if I'm not positively going to be a 4, then I'm probably going to not return next year. And now, guys, I feel very confident we will have a senior 3 co-ed.
Story of my life.
Yeah, it was a like emotional and tough weekend in the world of Danielle's brain. But if you're like not even remotely considering or releasing what kind of age division and teams and stuff like that, at very minimum, meet with these parents and meet with the athletes and say, based on her skills currently, she is this level. Now, I urge you, don't forget there's this whole other side of it, which is stunting and jumps and dance and all the stuff we talked about in previous episodes. So I have some athletes that needed a little bit of a reality check. You know, they have all their level 3 skills. They're working level 4 tumbling, but they came from a gymnastics background or a tumbling. We offer competitive tumbling in our gym, so a tumbling background. And they're new to stunting and they're new to jumps and they're still a little bit awkward in dance and they don't totally understand how to move clean in transitions. And there's like all these cheer skills they're still kind of refining. I don't think they're ready for a level 3. I think they're level 3 and 4 tumbling, but like level 3 and 4 in jumps, dance, and stunting, no.
You mustn't. You are not ready.
They're like a mid level 2. And so I've been really honest with those kids over time that, hey, I see that you have signed up to try out for level 3 and I want you to push your tumbling skills, but I also want to be realistic that level 2 is where you're going to place again next year because I think that you need XYZ, right? I noticed you weren't in jumps this year, but I think it's really important that your jumps are at that level before you move on. I noticed that dance was not your strong point this year, and I want you to get more experience in dance before you move to another level. I noticed you weren't in pyramid this year. You were our pretty tumbler across the front, but it was also because at the time of choreography, you weren't able to hold that stunt. And so this year, I need you fully in the stunts so that you're ready for the next level.
You need to start preparing yourself.
So I did have some of those conversations. Again, if you can go back to the facts and say she wasn't in elites or maybe she was in elites, but we saw based on her footwork, in her basing, based on the shoulder strength, based on XYZ, she really needs another year at this level despite her tumbling skills. I think when we put it in perspective for parents and athletes, they can accept that reality early on, take on the new challenge, and at least in my gym, the majority of the time, the athletes can happily walk into the season, maybe redoing another level, which is normal. So if I have parents listening right now, it is not normal to go up a level every year, but redoing some of those levels, especially when there's a big jump between levels. I personally believe there's a decent gap between 2 and 3. Gap may not be the right word, maybe a jump, but in that sense, there's a decent amount of stunting that has to be able to happen at level 3, and you have to have a strong foundation of level 2 in order to do that. So don't forget to be very transparent, give a heads up to the athletes and their parents when it comes time for tryouts, especially if you see that they are going to try out at a certain level. That is one reason that for our tryouts, we have them select, this is the level that I'm going to try out for, because I want to know how realistic they are about tryouts and where they're going to place. Now, I will get kids that will say, like my daughter, we're not going to have a level 4 next year. I know that. I'm dealing with the feelings still, but she's still going to try out at level 4 because I want her to challenge her skills when it comes to the tumbling and the dance and the jumps and all that stuff, right? And I do encourage those kids sometimes, continue to try out at that level. Show us what you've got on tumbling, but know that the things that are not in that portion of tryouts are the reason that you would make this level. This is kind of a bonus one I didn't have in there. Guys, don't be afraid of losing athletes because where you are going to place them is not where they want. I think there is a misperception a lot of times with parents that we are afraid to lose certain athletes, and so we are going to place them at a level that they are not ready for. It's simply not true.
It's not true! It's not true!
I've had plenty of athletes over the years leave and go to bigger gyms up in Kansas City area. And sometimes they're successful and sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're going up there to try out for a senior level 4 flyer spot and they make a junior level 3 basing spot. Same thing they would have made at my gym. It doesn't happen every time. Sometimes they do make a higher level and sometimes they are successful at that level for sure. It's the minority, right? But the big thing here is don't be afraid to tell an athlete, no, I'm sorry, I can't place you at that level because you're afraid they're going to go to a gym down the street. You need to build your teams and you need to build them with the integrity that you believe you need to have so that you can have a successful season. And if those kids were going to leave because they didn't make a particular level, trust me, they're going to leave at one point anyway. So don't be afraid to cut those ties now. And I know I sound kind of non-emotional about this, but like one of my favorite athletes I have ever coached left us last year to go to a bigger gym in the city to be on a higher level where I felt that the level we were offering was going to be sufficient. So like I've been in your shoes before if that's the situation you're in. I still wasn't willing to change what I was going to do because I was afraid to lose somebody. Okay, number 3. This can get you into trouble with your season even before it begins. Be careful of creating teams that don't align with your goals. When I told you on the last episode that we did some pre-placement, I actually sat, and it's like this whiteboard that is on a stand that sits in my living room, and we do it a couple weeks out, and then I kind of sit there and like while I'm in the living room or while I'm making dinner, like I can see the board and I just think on it. And I like keep it very visual. Yes, I have a 15-year-old. She knows better than to say anything or let there be a picture of it in the background or anything like that. But I just think about it. And there are some things that don't always sit right with me, and I can't quite figure out why. And this year, one of the teams didn't quite sit right. Like it looked good in terms of progressions. Like it would be wonderful to have, like what a perfect world it is when you have a mini level 1 and a youth level 2 and a junior level 3 and a senior level 4, and like what great progression and like how great that looks for the gym to be able to have these smooth progression periods. But you also have to place the athletes that you have where they would be best suited. What I noticed we were doing in pre-placements is we were extending a lot of kindness, and like kindness is probably the wrong word, but grace. Like, she has a tuck and she's like pretty close to an aerial too. And, she was brand new stunting at level 2, but like, I bet she could get it. And I noticed in pre-placements, we were just very overly positive and like rose-colored glasses. And then as we sat back, we're like, but we also want to win this season and we want to be highly competitive. And being a small gym, that can be pretty hard sometimes. Like in a town of 20,000 people, I only have so many options for kids to build teams. And we all come from these like small farm communities, and it's not like there's a cheer gym on every corner. I don't know that our initial pre-placement placed teams appropriately. I feel like the initial placement had us with a couple of teams that didn't totally align with our goals for the next season. So while I don't believe that, every season needs to be our winning season, I believe that every couple of seasons we better be pretty darn close to winning because it is ultimately competitive cheer and every kid deserves that experience. As I brought up last year, these 6-year-olds that are, 6 and 7, and they joined our elite program and they were a mini elite team. I found that like they're really strong athletes, but they needed a season to get there. They needed a season to take those individual skills and turn them into team skills. Just because, a couple of them have handsprings and stuff like that, it would be a disadvantage to them to immediately move them up to a level 2 team just because they have those tumbling skills when truly they haven't been able to max out stunting at level 1 because they were so little last year, right? They were just not able to do all the cool stunts. They did a lot of cool stunts, but like they weren't able to do all of them, and they weren't able to add that creativity into their tumbling because we didn't have all of it at the beginning of the season. This season, it was important to me that we would be building teams that had the potential to win, knowing that for that particular team, last year, their goal was to basically level up and have fun. Love cheerleading, learn cheerleading. This year, they learned a lot of cheerleading, and now I want to win and have fun with them so they can experience that win.
We came here to win. We need this.
Make sure that you are building teams that align with your season goals. It's fine to have rose-colored glasses with your athletes sometimes, but it's necessary to define what your goals are going to be for the season as a program and as a gym, and ensure that you are building teams that can meet those goals. If you are not a gym that goes to end of season events every year, it can be really hard to say, okay, we're going to go to the Summit or the All-Star World Championship every other year, but then the years that you're going just so happen to be the years that your kids are often leveling up. And, maybe a whole junior 2 team becomes a junior 3 team, and maybe that's not the right season for it. So really think about, what are your goals for the season and how do they align with the teams that you're building? Now, my good friend Jeff Benson is possibly listening to this saying, but Danielle, your teams need to set their goals. And he's absolutely right. Once you form the team, they should set the goals for the season. That said, you as the coach sometimes know what you're going to need for that long-term retention. As the coach, I coached that mini level 1 team. I know that they just had a great season of growth. And I know as a coach that to retain them long-term, they're going to need to experience a couple of really exciting wins to continue developing the passion for a competitive sport. Or at least, boy, guys, you were in second, but by a hair. So as you're building those teams, keep your goals in mind. Number 4, be cautious of letting others sway the process. So I told you last time on our episode that I do not have all of the coaches there in the same room as we're building the teams, because I think it's really important that, because I set the path for our teams this season, and I defined, here are the goals that I think need to happen, whether it's a winning season or a leveling up or a challenge or a have fun season for these particular teams. I think we will sometimes get coaches that have other goals for the season. They might look at their team and say, wow, I have a lot of back walkovers on this team. We're going to win this season. And that is the goal, right? Whereas a more experienced coach might look at them and say, we have a lot of back walkovers, but none of these kids have ever stunted before. So this is probably going to be a growth year. So what we find when we have tons of people involved in the process of placing teams is that sometimes when a coach sees a particular team, they see things differently than I may have seen them. And so it's important that you're careful about not letting a few voices sway the decisions of the program. Other times I've had this happen in the past is maybe one coach is highly advocating for an athlete and that athlete just isn't ready. Maybe they're close or they're very mature or whatever it may be. But a lot of times we have that advocate, and whether they're right or not, it may not, again, align with the goals of the team and of the program for the upcoming season. We are coaches, but a lot of us are moms, and we're people. You're going to have rose-colored glasses at times. It's hard because we see the athletes and we know how hard they're working. And I will be the first one to say that, have I placed the kid because of how hard they work before? Yes. Was it the right decision? Not always. Sometimes they worked really hard and it still wasn't, they shouldn't have leveled up. Sometimes they worked really hard and they leveled up and then they stopped working hard. So it's important for us to use facts and not feelings when you're making these decisions. And I know that's hard because our goal is also retention.
That's true. That's very true.
At the end of the day, the data doesn't lie. Can the athlete do 10 out of 10 back handsprings? Can the athlete do 10 out of 10 back walkover back handsprings? Can the athlete do 10 out of 10 front walkover round off back handsprings? And by the way, can all 30 of those passes look pretty good and happen after they've run sprints or done a whole bunch of burpees or something else that would be more equivalent to actually being in a cheerleading routine? The long-term damage of moving these athletes up is retention, right? You don't always see the retention that you want when you have the athletes at the wrong level or the wrong age division. I did have that this year. I had someone who has been at level 3 for about 2 years, good level 3 athlete. I think she probably could have hung at level 4. I think that another year at 3 would definitely not have been bad for her. I think there were some stunts that could have been harder. There were definitely some progressional stunts that she didn't get to participate in because at the time she wasn't the strongest athlete for it. And there were group limitations also, and also conditioning limitations back during choreography at the beginning of the season. And so when we said, hey, this is going to be a level 3 team, she said, I'll pass for next season. I really wanted level 4. And I think what ultimately happened is we kind of did a disservice by putting her at a higher age division and at a level 3 and making it seem like at that point it was so easy and we should absolutely move to 4 because 3 was just too easy, right? I definitely think we did a disservice in that sense, because had this athlete moved up and seen that kids like my daughter are going to be at level 3 for the 5th, 6th year in a row, because I mean, she can max out. She's landing her full on the floor, but her teammates aren't there yet. But I still absolutely believe we can build a routine that will challenge her at level 3. And if there's people out there saying you are sandbagging this because you have a kid with a full, no, I got a couple of kids with fulls. I just don't have enough of them to make a team with them. Nor could they stunt at that level just yet. They would have to go through the progressions of getting to that level. So no, in a town of 20,000 people, you cannot sandbag. It's not possible. So be careful of letting 1 or 2 people sway the process. This also includes your parents. This includes the parents of the athletes, especially those who may or may not believe that their kid should be at a particular level. I have had, just like you probably, majority of people want their child to move up. I have had 1 or 2 people say, I don't want her to move up yet. I want her to stay where she's at, where I felt like her moving up would be the better decision. Now, I am more willing to be swayed if a parent is wanting their child to stay at a particular level because maybe all of her friends are at that level, or they feel like it's the better age fit, or they're about to have a really busy season, or their kid is about to also do soccer. Like, I'm more willing to be swayed in that direction than I am in the opposite direction, because one is guaranteed. You have the skills and you just want to stay there. I can, like, usually you can get me on that path, right? Unless I think it's a long-term bad decision for retention. At the same time, the other path being you want me to push your child that may or may not have those skills or that level of maturity yet, that's a hard sway. Okay, number 5, fifth mistake you can make to ruin your season before the season ever truly begins is placing the wrong coach on the wrong teams.
Oh, it's bad juju.
We're about to walk into season 14. I have absolutely done this before. I'll actually give you a good example of the most recent time that I did this. The year I was publishing, shameless plug, the Cheer Gym Owner's Handbook, your guide to running a successful all-star gym. The year I was writing this book, I was coaching a team. And yes, it was only one team, but we had a new director in place. And I was coaching a youth level 2 team, and they needed more of me than I was actually able to give that season. I had already started writing my book. We were in the editing process. I have been told by several friends at this point that, like, editing is pretty intense. There is a lot of work to be done. And I totally underestimated the amount of work that it was going to be on my behalf. And so at the time, I said, yeah, I'm still going to take on this youth level 2 team. Quite frankly, it was a mistake. Wrong coach, wrong team. I just loved those kids. It was my second year coaching that team. I do love youth kids. I feel like I can be like, still have dry humor, but they actually get it. And so they're, for me, that's a fun age group, although the minis really gave them a run for their money this year because I loved the minis. But it was the wrong kind of team for the point in my life that I was in. I needed a whole lot more free time so I could get those edits done and get that book out on time and get it published before our conference and like all that stuff. And it was a really hard decision for me to have to come off the team. And I don't think that is there are times that it has to happen every couple of seasons and it's fair, but I don't necessarily think it's something I couldn't have prevented by being more cautious when I placed teams in the first place. And so know that I think, putting the wrong coach with the wrong team can really impact not only athlete retention, but staff retention as well. I've had coaches in the past that were like, no, I only prefer to coach junior and senior teams. And I'm like, great, you're coaching tinies next year because we have to have an appreciation for all age groups. And there are times that I think that's okay. And I think it's necessary because I do believe that we should value cheerleading at every age division. However, there are also times that I've had coaches who are way too competitive that I put on a prep team and way too chill and I've put them on an elite team. And there are times that those way too chill coaches have been on older teams, like a senior team, where you really truly need that firm, almost maternal, in my mind, like a maternal kind of thing. And I'm sure there's like 20-year-old coaches out there that totally disagree with me, and that's fine. In our gym, we found that there has to be a big enough age gap between the kids you're coaching and yourself for it to be a smooth season. That is at least my experience so far. So I do think putting the wrong coach with the wrong team can ruin this right from day one. Are you assigning a team to a coach because that's the team that the coach has said they want, or because you actually believe it's going to be a good fit? Think about the strengths of the coaches, the personalities of the coaches. If you do team coaching where there's 2 coaches on a team or more, do those coaches mesh? Do their strengths cover the other's weaknesses, or at least complement the other's weaknesses? Do their schedules align? Do their levels of commitment align? Like, there's a lot to think about. If you have 2 or 3 coaches in your gym who all have full-time jobs and this is kind of what they do on the side for fun, like maybe they can't be together on a team. Maybe it's too demanding to put them together on a team that then you're going to say, but you have to film for legality review. You have to submit your videos. You have to do, whatever it is that you may require of your team coaches. You have to be at all of these trainings or 2-day competition every month or several times a month. Maybe that's too demanding for the coaches on that team.
I can't take it anymore.
So really consider those coaching pairs if you go in pairs. And if you don't go in pairs, really think about somebody's lifestyle before you place them on a team, depending on the demands of the team. There are also times that maybe I have more vocal kids or more vocal parents or like challenging parents, and I really need to put them with a strong team coach. Now, I can't do that every single time because we know that challenging parents don't always start challenging and they're not always challenging forever. There might be seasons of life that is the case, but I often need those parents who are very challenging to be with a strong coach who is going to be strong in communication, plan ahead, have great communication with the kids, versus maybe a team of, tiny prep where they're all just like, man, my kid is so cute. Like, I just love that she's out there having fun. And you can have a little bit more laid back coach that's happy to play a game at the end of practice instead of, practice every second of the time that's allotted. Tryouts are kind of a high stakes moment in our gyms. And it's one of the few times a year that the decisions you make right now, really to backtrack them, sets you backwards 5 steps. And your goal is to move forward and not have to go too far backwards. They don't have to be high-risk decisions. You can make calculated decisions. You can communicate with parents and say, I don't know if she'll be super happy in this placement position, but I do feel this is the best spot for her, and here's why. But guys, I will tell you, do it before the tryout results come out, because someone's opinion of how the season is going to go will be formed almost immediately when they see what age division, what level, and who their coaches are. For me, we pretty much release all that stuff a little bit sooner. We say, here's what you're probably going to be on. Here are the age divisions that you're eligible for, but I probably will put you on this one. While those coaches may still change a little bit, I'm probably going to release them in the next week or 2. These are the divisions I think we'll have, and here's who's going to coach them so that people can start preparing and mentally preparing in advance. Now, what is the excitement of tryouts when you do all of that? Well, for us, we've got a new uniform this year. It's going to be kind of unique. I'm super excited for it. It is taking forever to design. China and these tariffs are really not helping me. But I do have some good options. I've got several designers and I've got a couple companies trying to fight really hard to earn our business, which I really love. And I feel like that's how it should be in the industry. Great customer service, great product, and everything they can to earn your business. So that's exciting. I have not revealed that uniform yet. We, in the past, have done a different theme every year. This year was fire. We did a couple years of military. We did like precious stones. We are going to centralize to a single theme for all of the years moving forward, and it will just slightly vary. I can't say what it is yet because I haven't released it to my gym parents, but I'm really excited about it because it just makes sense for where we live and what we do and the community that we are a part of. Team names, they're exciting. People are excited to see who's going to coach my kid. What's the name of the team going to be? I don't know. Like, where are we going on competitions and stuff like that? It's still exciting. So if you are thinking that tryouts are about to be very stressful, I hope these 5 tips have helped you so that you have a smooth tryout process, an even smoother team reveal, and a really fantastic start to your season. Because end of season events can be very stressful. Tryouts can be very stressful. And the day you put those teams out, hopefully takes a little bit of the weight off of your shoulders. Guys, thank you for joining me for this episode of Fireside Chat with the Johnstons. If you are not part of our Facebook groups, head over to Facebook. If you are a gym owner, join the Cheer Gym Owners Facebook group. If you are a coach or an owner who loves to coach, make sure you join the All-Star Cheer Coaches and Owners group. And then make sure you join us in Dallas June 20th through 22nd for our annual summer conference. I should have counted. I don't know how many annual years this is. Maybe like 3, 4, 5. I don't know. We've hosted conferences all the way since 2018, probably every summer, actually. Maybe it's like 7. Anyway, Shelly knows that answer. But it is our annual summer conference. It is going to be, I think, the biggest conference we have had yet. We will have 6 tracks, including the International Judges Association track, 2 skills tracks, a management and leadership track, an owners track, and a track for our Next Gen Academy members. If you're not part of the Academy, several weeks out from conference, you won't be able to join those classes. So make sure that you also head over to our website at nextgenowners.com, click book a call, talk to a member of our team, and figure out what you need to do to make this the best season yet. Thanks so much for joining me, you guys. And with that, I will see you guys on the next episode.